Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to the listeners wherever in the world you are. Today on Talking Points, we would like to talk about democracy. Democracy um, is probably one of the greatest legacies that the ancient Greeks left for mankind. One of the main great legacies they left. Democracy as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, was a significant step in human civilization because it really allowed mankind to move away from the autocracy to a government um, of the people, by the people, for the people. Autocracy as um, a, a reflection of the primeval survival of the fittest, dominate or be dominated, eat or be eaten, or as Charles Darwin put it, survival of the fittest. And I think mankind, as human beings, as a creature of reason, must have finally realized the sheer futility of this endless cycle of forever fighting to dominate somebody else. And if you free yourself from that, you can do a lot of other things to your benefit, to society's benefit. And that's where civilization truly started, as far as I'm concerned. And the Greeks were the first nation to really define how that system can work. One of the things that they realized was it is important for the citizens to be educated. Democracy will not work unless the citizens are educated. We in Zimbabwe, 42 years after independence, 2,500 years after the Greeks transitioned from autocracy to democracy, we are still struggling to make democracy work. And this is our problem. Whenever somebody gets into power, into a position of power and authority, the instinct, the primeval instinct of dominating kicks in, and we find ourselves in a situation where we've got back into an autocracy. It doesn't help, of course, when the citizens themselves are not educated and they're not able to stand up to the um, individual who is assuming dictatorial powers and becoming an autocrat. I'd like to welcome Godfrey Nyamgure to the discussion today. Thanks very much, Godfrey, for taking the time. I don't know whether you'd like to say something there.
Yes, thank you for inviting me, and good evening if there's many other people listening. Yes, you have given a good introduction on what democracy is, but there is one point that I just picked on your definition of what democracy is, which is education. Education can come in many ways, really. Do you mean education in the process or education as in general? Education, the process, meaning the process of democracy. Because you could be educated without understanding what the term democracy really means.
Well, in this particular case, democracy, if you're going to implement the system, you've got also to appreciate the distinction between a government of the people, for the people, by the people, as distinct from autocracy, where an individual holds all the power and he tells everybody else, dictates to everybody else what to do. But part of that is not only the system of government, but to understand that you as a citizen, you have got a say in the governance of the country in general. Some of these things has to do with voting, for instance. You have, as a citizen, you've got to understand the choices of candidates that are put before you, to be well educated, to have an informed vote. It's not just a question of turning up on the day of voting and casting your vote. You've got to understand the difference between the candidates. What are they offering? You know, if they're only promising you food, for instance, and they're denying you your basic fundamental rights, the temptation for somebody who is not educated and well informed would be to go for the food, which defeats the whole point of democracy. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yes, you are right there, particularly on the candidates, what they have to offer. Most people really don't understand. I don't know, maybe that's where education comes in. They don't understand what really is the source of the problem, or what is the potential which they can get to. We just take, for example, in Zimbabwe, what is the potential that Zimbabwe has that can improve their lives? You are right as well when you say the temptation for the not so educated is to just go for the food, and it's not for everlasting food for the moment. They can easily fall for that. They probably lack the understanding of food, sustainable provision of food. So I do agree with you that people need to understand some of the basics of what really keeps them going. It's not about what you are just being promised, which is just food. There are many other things that are linked to the provision of food.
Well, to follow up on that point, actually, people should understand that, take for instance the issue you're talking about of food or jobs, which is very common. If you are in an autocracy, yeah, you can be promised all those things, but if the person fails to deliver, you have no recourse. In other words, you can't say you have failed. You should get out of power, because it's an autocracy. You do not have a democratic say in the governance of the country. This is why it is important to understand the fundamental need for a fully functional democratic system of government. And that is what has been lacking. I think most people would like to see Zimbabwe a democracy, and that's what we wanted in 1980. But I don't think most people even appreciated what a democratic country should be like, much less to defend it. That is where the problem of ignorance comes in. I think in Zimbabwe, ignorance rules the roast.
Yes, maybe it goes well, for this generation. We tend to think democracy is like as you said earlier on, the survival of the fittest. We just sort of go along with that. Whoever is powerful is the one that is supposed to be ruling, without looking at whether that person is capable of ruling and providing. You
Yeah,
have
but on that point, just a point of clarification. Survival of the fittest is the primeval, is the default setting of what the in humankind will be an autocracy, where you seek to dominate other people. And in this particular case, you accept, as somebody who is dominated, you accept it as, okay, I'm dominated. But invariably, none of us want to be dominated. And this is why you find when you've got an autocracy, it's unstable. You will always be looking for an opportunity to to be the one who is doing the dominating. Now, if you get involved into that, it's a continuous fight where even if you manage to be the dominant one, I mean, let's face it, Mugabe was the dominant one, but he was forever looking behind his shoulders because he knew Kuti, there were others who would want to take his position. And lo and behold, even after 37 years, somebody did come along. One morning, he woke up with a gun pointing to his temple and telling him that he must step down. And he was forced to step down. That is what the cycle that we are caught up in. If you have got a democracy, it's a government by the people, for the people, in which everyone has got a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That is what democracy is. And I think to make it work, it is important that people should be educated. But to move on to the next point, the issue of elections, for instance, I think is an issue that has been many people have failed to understand. And I would like to invite the listeners to listen to this a video by Mabena. He is one of the individuals. I find him to be articulate, but he comes up with many points here that I think we should look at as well as a starting point for discussion. I'll turn it on now.
Revolutionary greetings, comrades. I am Mabuto Nicholas Mabena, General Secretary of the Zimbabwe Communist Party. In this video, I'm informing you that in Zimbabwe, elections are not rigged on polling day. What happens is every party contesting elections is represented through their party agents at the polling station. When ballot boxes arrive, they will inspect that no ballot paper has been tampered with. In the morning when elections, before the casting of votes, they inspect the ballot box that there is nothing deposited inside. When you then enter the polling station and you have your Zimbabwean ID, they check your name on the voters roll. They then proceed to give you the ballot paper. You go to the ballot booth on your own. You cast your vote. Then deposit the ballot paper in the ballot box. You then walk out. While you are going through all this process, all party agents will be observing you. In the evening, when the voting closes, they seal the ballot box together. Then later on, open in the presence of everyone, and they count the votes. Once counting is done at a polling station, they then display the results of that particular polling station outside the polling station. So on election day, your vote is protected, your vote is secure, registered to vote. In the next video, we will then discuss how
Okay. I think there are a number of important issues that Mapena has raised there. The most important one is this issue of saying that the elections are not rigged on voting day. That is also not correct, because the opportunity to rig elections is not only happens on voting day. It can happen well before that. What is the point of saying to somebody you can go and cast your vote when we know in Zimbabwe it has been very difficult, or ZANU-PF has made it very difficult, if not impossible, for somebody to register to vote in the first place. Even if you do manage to get to register to vote, how many times have we heard of people saying on the day of voting, I couldn't find my name on the voters' roll? In some cases, you may find it is on the general voters' roll, but it is not in the polling station voters' roll that you expected it to be. So the process itself in Zimbabwe is so flawed that to keep on pretending somehow people can go and register now and their vote will be counted and they can cast their vote on voting day and everything is okay, is absolutely incorrect. Even if you manage to get to that point, we also know in 2018, for instance, how many, that 16 polling station figures had exactly the same number of votes cast for the various candidates, spoiled votes, and so forth. And in all of those 16 cases, there was one common denominator. Mnangagwa had a commanding lead of votes in those polling stations. So it is clear what actually happened there is those were duplicated. Instead of entering the figures of that polling station once, they were entered twice or even 3 times.
Yes, if I may come in there. Yes, but if we listen to the video, I think it's just describing one segment of the process. In other words, he's asking you to follow your particular way, the process which your particular vote goes through. Like he says, is the next video, he'll be looking at the other parts of the process. But as far as he has described, I'm looking at the vote that I've managed to lodge. Where it goes is going to be sealed and then it will be opened. Just my vote.
Yeah, but Godi, that's what I'm saying. In this particular case, to say to somebody who you should go and register to vote, this is the process of voting. That process itself, before you even get there, you won't get there. That is the argument. How many people have failed to register to vote, for instance? In this since 2018 elections, up to May 30th of May this year, 2022, 4 years, MDC, or then now the Triple C, have been trying to register people. In fact, they set themselves a target of registering 6 million new voters. But according to ZEC, they only managed to register 250,000, or 4% of their target. And it's not because people were not willing to register to vote. We have heard reports of people in Harare finding it very difficult to register to vote. And then you hear there are only 2 places where they could register. A big town like Harare, how could you have 2 places where you could, the only 2 places where you could register? That is part of the rigging. So to pretend nothing has happened, you can go and register and then you can cast your vote and then the rigging even if he's going to discuss the rigging after that. That is a part and parcel of it. The process itself, once you accept the process, is flawed. And even to get to this point of voting, so many people have already been eliminated. What good is that process then? You cannot look at the process in isolation. You've got to look at it because it's a whole process. That is the argument.
I do agree with you, but I took it that is just looking at one of the lucky ones, Godfrey, who has managed to get to the polling station, finds his name, everything matches. He's just following Godfrey's process. However, Wilbert or John, probably that's what he's going to look at tomorrow, where Wilbert will get to the polling station, expecting to find his name there, probably not finding the name there.
Yeah, but then Godfrey, the point then is, if you have already eliminated a significant segment of the electorate, yeah, then if you are looking at the process itself, you can judge it to be free, fair, and credible then. Because that is exactly what he's saying there. People should go and register to vote. Not telling people, even the process of registering itself is a process that is so flawed. So many things can go wrong before you even get there. Even if you do get there, you register, you may find your name is not on the voters' roll. Even if you do cast your vote, in this particular case, Godfrey did cast his vote. But when you find when the tallies are being added, some of the polling stations that Mnangagwa was leading in, those figures are entered twice or three times. In other words, those people who voted Mnangagwa are voting twice. So the whole process is so flawed that you cannot expect a meaningful result out of it. And to keep on arguing that, this part of it is okay, and therefore then we should participate. You cannot separate the system. You judge the system in its complexity as a whole system. You cannot isolate it, because if you make that Nenkiri mistake, then you're bound to come up with a conclusion and saying the process of voting, sealing, and counting is fine. And even that is not fine, because there is evidence from the last election, the 2018 elections, that there are some polling stations where the V11s were not there. That's how flawed the system is. So the process that he has just described is the isolated case, the exception to the rule. The whole system itself, even then, is so subject to manipulation, to the point where even ZEC officials did not have V11 forms. They themselves did not have. That is why the whole process has got to be rejected. We can't keep on arguing people to go and register to vote in a system that is so flawed that we know there are flaws at every turn. That is the argument.
Yes, agreed. Because yes, it did touch on many points there, which also included the registration. Yeah, we have to look at, if we look at it in isolation, Godfrey can go on and say, yes, I followed my vote. Surely it's showing that I have my own vote. I have voted for X, and it was noted against X. Godfrey can say, yes, on my part, the system was fair. I can follow through my vote to the end.
But Godfrey, the minute you start doing that, that is a mistake. The system should not only work for a few people; it should work for everybody. Because if you are happy with the system, then you are saying, "Oh, I'll support it," and I don't care what is happening to somebody else until it happens to you. That's when you will start saying the system is not right. No, you can't keep on doing that. What you need to do is to say the system is not working. Let's fix the system, not just because it's working for me or it's working for Godfrey, and it's not working for somebody else. No, it must work for everybody. That's why democracy says it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And the people should include everybody, not a select few. Otherwise, we end up with the autocracy that we're talking about, survival of the fittest. So if you happen to have right connections, why not? You survive. But that is not democracy. That's autocracy.
Okay. He promises to give us the next video, so his presentation on the other aspects of the process. But you are right, it has to be everybody. Everyone has to follow their vote through to the end.
Yeah, but no, the important thing there to emphasize, Cody, is that in this particular case, it is important that we should get the principles right. It's not a question of, we'll see what he has to say next time. Even what he has said now is wrong, because he has deliberately left out the cases of those who were left out at the voter registration, those who could not vote because they were not on the voters' roll, those who voted on the day of voting, but you find their names were counted twice because a polling station's figures were entered twice. In other words, those people were allowed to vote twice. So that system is flawed. What he has said there is flawed. And when we start beginning to cherry pick, that is where the system completely collapses. You cannot cherry pick. You've got to accept the system as it is. That is important.
Yeah, it's so involving if you have to look at the whole process. You could even say on that, if you check the voters roll, you could find your name is entered twice. However, you are not going to be the one who is going to be filled on the next one. Someone else might use your name or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're going to accept this system, you cannot cherry pick. You cannot start saying, "Oh, this is working, so we should accept the system." No, you should look at everything in its entirety, particularly when you're looking at a situation where we've had elections in Zimbabwe for the last 42 years, and elections have been blatantly rigged repeatedly. That is the reality of Zimbabwe. That is the reality we have got to accept. So it is important that when you know that all that information, because the whole idea of that video was to say to people they must make the effort to go and register to vote. To keep on encouraging people when you know there are so many flaws in the system, I think is irresponsible, to say the least.
You are right. That's where education comes in. As far as Godfrey is concerned, if he goes around with the step-by-step process that has been explained by Mabena, Godfrey will walk out there and say, yes, everything that I did was well recorded on the other end. But Godfrey has to have the understanding that a lot has gone through this process, preparation, and probably after that. That's where, as you your opening statement, you touched on education. Godfrey has to, the ordinary person from the village will be happy that, oh no, it was quite smooth, and I was the only one who went on to that polling station, and my vote, surely X got one vote, which was mine. That person will be happy. They don't have the knowledge of how anyone else has been deprived or where irregularities existed in the process. They are just happy to see their vote counting on the other end.
Yep. But in this particular case, it is also important to emphasize that when somebody like Mabena, he is supposed to be an intellectual, and in fact, the whole purpose of his video is to educate the people. And in this particular case, one has got to ask then, is that the kind of education you want to give the people? That is what you're doing there, is effectively misinforming the people. Because if you are telling them that the system is working when you know it's not working, it becomes, totally meaningless, to say the least. We can't keep on saying to the people, go and register to vote, when we know the system is so flawed. Even getting to the voters' roll itself has got so many obstacles. You've got to jump so many hoops, which is not what the election of the process of election should be. A democratic system where the system is working and is working for everybody says that everybody has got the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. In other words, ZEC should be bending over backwards to make sure that everybody who wants to register to vote is given the opportunity to register to vote. And then come election day, they are given the opportunity to vote. And they can have the confidence that their vote will count. And that there are not going to be some special people whose vote who will be allowed to vote twice. The system itself must, that is what democracy is all about. We cannot have a situation here where we somehow want to say it's a democratic system and people should go and participate in an election when we know the system itself is so flawed. That result is absolutely meaningless, because when you have got a situation like what we had in 2008, where ZANU-PF was able to rig the process to the point where 73%, the opposition got 73% of the vote, but still that was not good enough to win the election. That says that this process here, to call it an election, is nonsensical. You will never have free, fair, and credible election if winning 73% of the vote is not good enough for you to get power.
Yeah, but as far as Godfrey is concerned, he has ticked the system because he's satisfied that he has not been denied anything. He was on the voters' roll. And when he went through the process, he did not see the chance of anyone else stuffing the boxes because he was well represented by the party that he was voting for. So, stuffing of boxes, he is quite certain that nothing of that sort will happen. And he is also seen his vote registered against the person. He is not educated enough to go and check what Wilbert has been denied of. But as far as the
what about now that he knows that there are other people who have been denied the vote?
Yeah, then he will join. Then, if he's asked outside, is asked outside the polling station, he will say yes. The process was smooth. That's what Mabena was just trying to address there.
Yeah, that's what he was trying to address. But does Mabena not know that there is also all these other flaws before you even get to the voting day?
Yeah. Now, if we are looking at Mabena, yes, we can say he missed some things that he is quite educated enough to know that there are flaws that could have existed before even Godfrey got to the polling station.
Right. So for him to be producing a video encouraging others out there to go and register to vote and assuring them that the process will be credible is misleading, to say the least.
Yeah, yes. So in other words, a person has to follow through to understand the whole process and understand the loopholes that do exist. He has to go through all his videos if he's going to explain the loopholes that do exist in the process.
No, the first video already is misleading. That is the point I'm trying to make. To come back tomorrow and saying, I've got cases where people were denied the vote. But yesterday you were encouraging people to go and register to vote because you say the system is a credible system. Are you trying to say you can't make up your mind?
Okay. Maybe I need to listen to it again, because is he saying the system should work this way at the polling booth, or works this way? Because if he's just saying it should work this way, then he's all right.
No, what he's saying is that this is how the system works and it's working. Yeah. What I'm saying is that system he is describing, he has only taken one small section of it, yeah, without looking at, to get there, what other problems did you face? And also, even within that system, there are still problems that from the 2018 alone, you can pick up that system, the way he is describing it, that it works. It's not working, because if the system was working, when it comes to the ballots cast for each candidate, it should reflect the ballots cast at each polling station. And I've just given you an example of 16 polling stations in the 2018 elections, where the figures in two or more of those polling stations were exactly the same. Exactly the same. So the process itself of when it comes to your votes being counted from the polling station to the command center, the process itself breaks down. So in this particular case, the process, the whole point of the argument is we should not mislead people to make them believe the process is working, and therefore then we should participate. The process is not working. And to keep on participating, you're only giving the process credibility. And then at the end of the election, on the morning after, you complain that the election was rigged. What's the point? 42 years after independence, we can't even articulate what constitutes free and fair elections. That is the problem.
You are right. For someone who has just listened to his video, they can go away and say, yeah, Mabena has just explained it's a smooth process. So it is misleading because he left out some important aspects of areas where there could be manipulation of the votes.
Okay, thanks very much, Godfrey. I don't know whether you want to make your closing remark there before we end the transmission.
Why are you? Is it pressed for time? Because I thought you were going to play the Mapfumo one.
Well, this particular one is already 41 minutes.
Oh yeah.
We can conclude this one, and then we can discuss something else behind the scenes. I don't know whether you want to conclude on this one.
Yeah, we can conclude with this one. Yeah, it is misleading to someone who is not who has just taken that segment and walked away with that information, because they will think everything is fair, their vote is protected, because each individual will be looking at the aspects that concern their vote. If they are told it has been sealed and no other staffing, then they will be happy and they can walk away, and really they will be encouraged to register to vote, because they've only looked at that segment of the process.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Godfrey. And to the listeners, I think hopefully we can carry on with the discussion on democracy, because I think this is a very important topic. To me, personally, I think it is tragic that 42 years after independence, Zimbabweans are struggling to define what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections, and cannot transition from an autocratic system of government to a really functioning democratic system of government. That, to me, is tragic. Really, there is absolutely no reason why we are failing to do so. Thanks again to the listeners. Have a nice day, and goodbye. Thanks, Godfrey.
Thank you. Goodbye to the listeners.